The dollar is on the brink of collapse, and your savings could vanish by 2025. Here's why. For decades, the US dollar has been the backbone of global trade, especially when it comes to oil. But that powerhouse agreement, the Petrodollar system, is set to expire in 2025, and when it does, the ripple effects could be catastrophic. Since the 1970s, countries have had to buy oil in dollars, keeping demand for the currency sky high. But now with that deal fading away, nations are already turning to other currencies for trade. China and Russia are leading the charge, striking deals in yuan and rubles instead. Without that constant global demand, the dollar's value could plummet, sending shockwaves through the economy. If the dollar weakens, inflation could spiral out of control, the cost of everyday goods would skyrocket, and the money in your bank account, it might not stretch nearly as far as it used to. This isn't just some distant threat, it's a ticking time bomb set to go off in less than 2 years, and if we're not prepared, the fallout could rewrite the rules of the global economy overnight. For half a century, the world has run on something called the petrodollar system. Here's how it works. Every time a country wants to buy oil, and let's face it, every country needs oil, they have to pay for it in US dollars. Doesn't matter if the buyer is Japan or Germany or even Saudi Arabia itself, the deal is done in dollars. This little rule, set way back in the 70s, turned the dollar into the must-have currency of global trade. Now, why does that matter? Because it creates a never-ending demand for dollars. Countries need to stockpile them just to keep their economies running, which means they're always buying US debt, like treasury bonds, to get their hands on those dollars. And that's where the magic happens for America. Even though the US runs up massive debts and doesn't produce as much as it used to, the world still needs its currency. It's like having a credit card that never gets declined because everyone's forced to use it. This system has given the US unmatched power. It can print money, borrow endlessly, and still stay on top because the world is stuck in this cycle. Other countries have to play by the rules, but America? It gets to write them. And as long as oil is king, the dollar stays on the throne. Back in 1974, the world was still reeling from the oil crisis, and the US was looking for a way to keep its economy stable. That's when Henry Kissinger, then Secretary of State, struck a deal with Saudi Arabia. The agreement was simple but powerful. Saudi Arabia would sell its oil only in US dollars, and in return, the US would provide military protection and support for the Saudi regime. This deal, known as the Petrodollar Agreement, had huge implications. It meant that any country wanting to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, and later other OPEC nations, had to first get their hands on US dollars. This created a massive global demand for the dollar, keeping it strong and reinforcing its status as the world's reserve currency. For the US, it was a way to maintain economic dominance, even as its own oil production declined. For Saudi Arabia, it meant security and a steady flow of American weapons and support, but it also tied the global economy even tighter to the dollar, shaping everything from trade policies to geopolitical alliances for decades to come. Some say it was a stroke of genius. Others argue it set the stage for future conflicts and economic imbalances. Either way, it changed the game. Saudi Arabia made waves in 2023 when they announced they wouldn't renew the Petrodollar Agreement. This was a big deal because for decades, the petrodollar system had been a cornerstone of global finance. Essentially, it meant that countries buying oil from Saudi Arabia had to pay in US dollars, which kept demand for the dollar high and helped maintain its status as the world's reserve currency. Now, with Saudi Arabia stepping back from this arrangement, it signals a shift in how oil trade could work moving forward. Countries might start using other currencies like the Chinese yuan or even digital currencies to buy oil. This could weaken the dollar's dominance and reshape the global financial landscape. It's not just about oil, it's about power, influence, and who holds the keys to the world's economy. And with this move, Saudi Arabia is showing they're ready to play a different game. Central banks are moving away from the dollar faster than they have in decades, since World War II, actually. It's a big shift, and it's happening right now. China's been leading the charge, cutting its U.S. Treasury holdings by over $300 billion since 2021. That's not pocket change. Other countries are following suit, looking for alternatives to the greenback. The dollar's still king, but the crown's feeling a little heavier these days. This isn't just about economics, it's about power, trust, and where the world's money might be headed next. And if history's any guide, shifts like this don't happen quietly. After the sanctions hit in 2014, Russia made a bold move. It started dumping its dollar reserves. And I mean nearly all of them. Instead of holding on to US dollars, they shifted gears and began stockpiling gold. Now, why does that matter? Well, for starters, it was a clear signal that Russia wanted to reduce its dependence on the dollar, which has long been the backbone of global trade and finance. By cutting ties with the greenback, they were essentially saying, we don't need to play by your rules anymore. But it wasn't just about making a statement. Gold is seen as a safe haven, something that holds value no matter what's happening in the world. By loading up on gold, Russia was protecting itself against economic shocks like inflation or currency devaluation. It also gave them more control over their own financial stability, especially if they faced more sanctions down the line. Of course, this move had ripple effects. Other countries started paying attention, wondering if they should do the same. It even sparked conversations about whether the dollar's dominance might be slipping. And let's not forget, gold isn't just a shiny metal, it's a tool. Russia could use it to back its own currency or even trade with other nations without relying on dollars. So, in a way, this wasn't just about economics, it was about power and independence on the global stage. So let's break this down. Right now, the petrodollar system keeps things pretty stable. Oil is traded in dollars, and that keeps demand for the dollar high. But if that system collapses, we're looking at a whole new ball game. Countries might start trading oil in their own currencies, or even something like gold or digital money. That means the dollar isn't the big player it used to be, and suddenly we've got a bunch of currencies competing for the top spot. Now imagine trying to buy stuff from another country when exchange rates are all over the place. One day, your money buys a lot, the next day, not so much. Businesses hate that kind of uncertainty. They might hold off on big deals or even stop trading altogether because they can't predict costs. And if trade slows down, well, that hits everyone. Jobs, prices, even the stuff you can buy at the store. It's not just about money either. Countries could start forming their own trade blocs, cutting deals with allies, and leaving others out in the cold. That kind of fragmentation, it's a recipe for tension, maybe even conflict, as everyone scrambles to protect their own economy. So yeah, the end of the petrodollar isn't just a financial issue, it's a shakeup that could ripple through the whole world. You know, it's not just everyday investors looking to hedge their bets these days. Some of the biggest names in finance and business are making serious moves into gold and foreign assets. Take Bill Gates, for example. He's been quietly shifting a chunk of his fortune into gold, and he's not alone. Hedge fund legends like Ray Dalio have been vocal about diversifying away from traditional markets, especially with all the uncertainty out there. And it's not just the ultra-wealthy. Central banks around the world are loading up on gold like never before. In 2023 alone, they bought over 1,000 tons of the stuff. That's a massive vote of confidence in gold as a safe haven. When you see institutions and billionaires all moving in the same direction, it's hard not to take notice. They're not just betting on gold, they're betting against the risks lurking in the global economy. And if history's any guide, when the smart money starts shifting, it's worth paying attention. You know, history has a way of repeating itself, especially when it comes to money. Every global reserve currency eventually loses its grip, and the dollar is no exception. It's following the same path as those that came before it. Take the Spanish real, for example. Back in the 16th and 17th centuries, it was the backbone of global trade. But Spain's endless wars and reckless spending weakened it. Inflation crept in, and by the 1800s, the real was just a shadow of what it once was. Then there was the Dutch guilder. In the 1700s, the Netherlands dominated trade and the guilder was king. But after decades of costly conflicts and financial mismanagement, its reign ended. The British pound took over, riding the wave of the Industrial Revolution. For over a century, it was the world's go-to currency. But 2 world wars and rampant inflation in the 20th century knocked it off its pedestal. Now, the dollar's been on top since the mid-20th century, backed by America's economic might. But look at the patterns. Debt piling up, money printing, geopolitical tensions. It's all happened before? The question isn't if the dollar will falter, but when. And when it does, history tells us another currency will rise to take its place. The cycle never really ends. All right, let's talk about how you can protect yourself if the economy takes a turn for the worse. The key here is diversification. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Start by looking at gold. It's been a reliable store of value for centuries, and it tends to hold up even when other investments falter. You don't need to go all in, but setting aside 10 to 20% of your portfolio in physical gold or gold-backed assets can give you a solid safety net. Next, consider other stable investments like real estate or government bonds. Real estate, especially in areas with steady demand, can provide both income and long-term value. Bonds, on the other hand, are generally lower risk and can offer steady returns. The idea is to spread your investments across different asset classes so that if one takes a hit, the others can help balance it out. Now, here's your action plan. First, assess your current financial situation. Know what you own and where your money is tied up. Second, start small. Even allocating a small portion of your savings to gold or bonds is a step in the right direction. Third, stay informed. Keep an eye on market trends and adjust your strategy as needed. And finally, don't panic. Economic downturns happen, but with a diversified portfolio, you'll be in a much stronger position to weather the storm. You know, when it comes to your financial stability, time really is of the essence. The longer you wait, the harder it gets to secure your future. Right now, inflation is eating away at your savings, and unexpected expenses can pop up out of nowhere. If you don't take action, you could find yourself in a tough spot down the road. The key points? First, you've got to have an emergency fund, something to cover at least 3 to 6 months of living expenses. Without it, one bad break could throw everything off balance. Second, paying down high-interest debt should be a priority because those interest charges add up fast, making it harder to get ahead. And third, investing wisely, even if it's just a little at a time, can help your money grow and keep up with rising costs. But here's the thing, none of this happens on its own.